Hello and welcome to episode 5 of JLXP. This is the last of the LCS preview episodes. This one will be talking about TSM, what their past was like a little bit, what going forward is going to look like. That's with Kobe. And then we talk about Evil Geniuses, who Azael, for those of you who don't know, was actually part of EG for a huge amount of his life, back with other esports, specifically World of Warcraft. So we talk a little bit of EG history in that one. If this is the first time you're listening to the podcast because you saw TSM and clicked, I would say, hey, check out some of the other ones. We talk about C9 and Dig in episode 1, 100 Thieves and Fly in episode 2. I don't need to go through the rest of them because if you've clicked on 1 and 2, you'll be able to see 3 and 4. But I like this episode. We talk a lot about Dardoch and Bjergsen and how kind of excited we are to see that concoction interact on TSM. And then EG is always fun to talk about, reminisce a little bit about esports history with Azael, as well as wondering what the defending LCS MVP is going to be doing on a completely new roster. So check out episode 5 right after this. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Right now, I have Kobe to help me talk about TSM.
Hi.
Hey, that was just like a sultry Kobe voice.
Yeah.
So this is the first team you've done with me, Kobe. What we've done with the other teams is we do a brief to medium history of how they got here, and then a little bit of 2020. For TSM, we'll see what happens. It might be a slightly longer history because it actually was so dominant. And 2 years ago, they were so much more popular, bigger than they are now. I run into fans on the street sometimes, and I feel like almost half of the fans will kind of recognize me. They'll say like, oh, I kind of recognize that voice. I'm like, oh yeah, do you watch LCS? They said, well, I was a TSM fan, and then it's like the last 2 years have just been rough. It's like, so I hope they're good this year because I have all of their LCS results split by split. Do you want to hear what they are?
I mean, TSM was the most popular League of Legends team for like a 7-year stretch, basically.
Even before the LCS, really.
Yeah.
Like all the way in 2012, right when COG did their first Korea trip is when
as soon as they left the country.
Yeah, it's like, well, now it's TSM, so that's just how it works. But so LCS started in 2013, TSM finished first, then Cloud9 came in and TSM got second. Then at the end of 2014, they got first. 2015, they got first in spring. COG beat them in 2015 summer, so it goes all the way from 2013. I'll just read out the results. First, second, first, second, first. And then we hit franchising, permanent partnership, 5th, 3rd, 2nd, 5th. So,
and I remember that day very clearly, Jatt. Because
which day?
When franchising hit, well, I guess it wasn't a single day.
Okay.
But when franchising hit, it was basically the off season is what I'm referring to. And it was this huge decision, right? Where it's the most controversial decision that we've had in a roster change in a very long time.
And this is bringing in Sven and Mithy for Double Lift and Biofrost.
And I think a lot of it does have to do with TSM's super long history up to that point. You're referring to even before the LCS, they gained a lot of fans with the odd one, and when Reginald was still playing mid, and they had been to so many international events and failed at so many international events, they were tired of it. Yeah, and Reggie thought that the best way to change that would to bring in Mithy, who was supposed to fix their shot calling and fix their international events
shot calling
strategy, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it's
hard looking back. We're like, what? But in the moment, you're like, okay, I can see it.
Yeah, because hindsight 2020, you say, oh, Sven and Mithy made MSI finals that year in 2017. Sven and Mithy also didn't make it out of group stage that year on G2, the same as TSM, who didn't make it out of the Team WE Misfits group. But I think when we look back to that moment, it's like, hey, TSM, you don't know what you got till it's gone. They took NA dominance for granted, and they've they've kind of lost that to Double Lift's brand in TL because it feels like that now is the premier team in the LCS because
For sure.
they're the ones that won the LCS. They haven't necessarily done vastly better internationally than some of the other teams of the past. Yes, they had the great MSI finals run, but so did COG back in 2016. I find it interesting how when I look at the TSM history, the 2017 into 2018 blow up of the bottom lane and jungle, switching out 3/5 of their roster, wasn't actually the first time they blew it up. At the end of 2015, if you remember the first Worlds in Europe, when they had that awful group stage, Dyrus retired, that was the first time they did the full switch out. They switched Dyrus, Amazing, Wild Turtle, Lust Boy, and brought in Haunter, Svenskeren, Doublelift, and Yellowstar. And then there was the slight little tweak to get Biofrost, and in my memory, that 2016 summer was peak TSM. I think that was kind of the best they had ever been. And then, the Worlds happened. We don't fully need to get into that, but...
I mean, Doublelift, Bjergsen, Biofrost, Svenskeren, Haunter.
Yeah.
Those guys, whenever they get together, even to this day, just outside getting food and stuff, they always post a picture with them.
Yeah.
And there's no other iteration of TSM that posts pictures of themselves now that are like, remember this squad? It's that squad that I feel like most people agree with you and they kind of fondly remember as like the peak TSM, because that was, even though they also did not, find these great heights at international events, that was the squad that most people felt like, all right, can actually do it.
Yeah. So Doublelift recently posted the Once Upon a Time picture of him, Biofrost, and Bjergsen. He's wearing a 2019 Worlds hoodie. I think
Does that ruin your immersion?
Yes, it does. It's like you're saying 5 years ago and today, but in the today picture, you're holding up a newspaper that says like 2020. It's clearly a picture that was just taken that one day, but it still brings back the overall memories. But what ended up happening this year is like the last 2 years have been bad for TSM. And this is the time where you think, okay, sure, actually do the reset again, because it's almost less defensible going back into the past, the 2018 reset, even though the 2016 reset worked so well. Like, that's what they were clearly going for. They said, hey, let's just try and reach a new peak by switching out new people. The one constant throughout all of it has been Bjergsen. This time, they've stuck with Broken Blade and brought back in Dardoch, Kabe, and Biofrost. I had one more thing I wanted to touch on because I find it cool how much this team has completely stuck by Bjergsen and Bjergsen is completely stuck by them, because this offseason, Bjergsen's contract was up for renewal and a lot of people thought he would go elsewhere. Can you guess how many different players Bjergsen has started with on TSM?
Total players?
Yeah, so this would be, I did this list as in, like, after he plays the first game of 2020, so this is with the Dardoch Kabe roster. How many unique players do you think he will have played in the LCS with starting on the 26th when their first game
in the
was?
LCS? So let's see, how many LCS years did he have? He's
been playing since 2014 spring. Yeah. That was the Odd One, X Special, Wild Turtle, Dyrus.
Oh man, it's got to be, it's over. I'll just go 40. I'll throw out 40.
You're way high. That's so
way high.
many players. But okay, you didn't want. I
don't want to be under.
Yeah, I built it up.
I was like, this is gonna be big.
This huge number. It's 24 players.
Okay.
And the reason that's so high is, as far as just like LCS teams, there's the most players that have even started for a team is 29.
Yeah.
Right? And that's, I think COG is tied with a couple other teams at 29. COG is tied with Dignitas, I believe, for most players who started in the LCS. But yeah, 3 different top laners. That's the least changed out role. Only ever played with Dyrus, Haunter, and Broken Blade.
Jungle's going to be juicy.
I'll end with that. 580 carries, Turtle, Keith, Doublelift, Sven, and now Kabe. Supports are 7, so it's the second most switched out role. X Special, Lust Boy, Glebe, Yellowstar, Biofrost, Mythy, and Smoothie. There's those, like, the Keith and the Glebe are like, oh yeah, that was for like a hot second.
Yeah, there's a couple of small ones where they're like, we've made a mistake.
The quick pivot away. And then Jungle, is going to be 9. So we had the Odd One era, followed by the Amazing era in 2014. Then they said, you know what? We're going to bring in Santorin. That also lasted 1 year in 2015. 2016 was Svenskeren time. They held on to him for a good 2 years. Those were good times.
He lasted a long time.
Yeah, that was 5 of them. The next 4 come in the next 2 years. So we got the Mike Young era, the Grig age. I can't think of
they can't all just be eras here, Jatt.
The Acadian moment.
Okay.
Yeah. The Speak a Blip. And now the Dardoch. I'm out of words.
It hasn't started yet.
Dardoch's time. We'll see. So that's so many junglers. What do you think about TSM's kind of overall moves coming into 2020?
So a lot of people are focused on Dardoch because, you're talking about how many different players and junglers Bjergsen and TSM have switched out. Dardoch has switched out teams, so many teams, right? But I was actually early. I was pretty focused on the Kabi change for them because I had really liked his performance in Europe. He had been really a consistent carry for the team. I started to put like a decent amount of faith, like as the game progresses, you get towards the later stages, you feel actually pretty comfortable. So I think that their bottom lane is a pretty strong setup for them with Biofrost being in Biofrost back. I thought he was one of the best both laning and outside of lane supports in the LCS last year. Of course, he's not the best because Core JJ is clearly
kind of dominant.
Exactly. You kind of have to look below that for the list. But I think he had a very strong performance along with Stixa. He played a lot of ranged mages, tried to play very aggressive lanes. There were just more looks, I felt like, that he played on stage that gave me confidence there. So I think their bottom lane setup is pretty good. And then I was a bit surprised that they kept Broken Blade after the summer fall off. Spring, there was a bunch of hype for everybody, right? That finals between TSM and Team Liquid was epic. Going as long as it did, his Vladimir play gave people a lot of, hope for his time in North America. Then his summer fell off pretty hard. So, that one was definitely one for me that they might have decided to change, but they decided to keep him around. They think they can get him back to those spring heights.
And I can see why they're doing that. I mean, I remember us talking at the start of last year of, hey, what's best case for Broken Blade and what's worst case for Broken Blade, and what do we think TSM is trying to do with this acquisition? And it felt a lot like they were trying to recreate what happened with Bjergsen in 2014. Here's a guy who was
I think everybody is always
standout.
Trying to create that with every new player that they get, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Every time it's a new player, it's how can we get Bjergsen?
Yeah.
But there was a lot of ingredients that matched Bjergsen's time, which were very young European player who had a bunch of standout moments in his young split. Before he gets mega famous, let's get him on TSM and then try and facilitate his growth. And in the spring split, it worked, as you mentioned. In the summer split, I think it is defensible to say the 3 different junglers made it hard for the top laner to succeed. And an environment that ends up leading to 3/5 of the team departing also is one where you're hoping you can trust the team to save the right things. And then the final question is like, who would they even bring in top lane? Because I look around, like Impact is locked up. No one's getting rid of Licorice.
It is an import slot, so
I guess it is an import slot. Can you think of an international? I know as soon as you break it international,
I know that
50 players.
I know that there were a lot
like Khan or
of
something.
late signings. Yeah, there were a lot of late signings over in Korea and China. So, there are theoretically a lot of different ones, but then you get into the issue. Reginald has also been one of the owners/GMs that has talked about really being cautious around foreign language only players.
Yes.
So even though it is an import slot, they have usually focused very heavily on teamwork and communication.
Yeah.
And not
especially lately because they did the Lust Boy, but Lust Boy also integrated with the team and spoke English and is stuck with them. And when they had the brief moment of Song and Lusboy on the team, that's kind of when you thought, hey, maybe they would bring in a Korean speaker or something. But I think with the current infrastructure of TSM, they would need to bring in a lot extra with that guy. I'm actually okay with them running it back with Broken Blade, as it's only his second year, and he does seem like a player with a lot of potential.
Yeah.
The big one, though, is going to be...
Saving it. I was saving that one for last.
You're saving it?
Let's get it.
I'm just too... It's too spicy to not talk about really early on. Dardoch.
Yeah.
Some people have been asking for this since as soon as Dardoch came on the scene.
Yeah.
It's 2015 when he was the ragey TL jungler. He's bounced around. He didn't actually play LCS last year. He was Academy. He actually did pretty well in Optic Academy, getting yet another chance.
I know a lot of people kind of feel that way, where they're like, how does he keep getting chances? How does, how can people still keep believing that the team environment is going to work out?
Yeah.
But let me give my, because I'm one of the
You're
few.
a Dardoch defender.
I'm one of the few in the office that keeps on thinking that a Dardoch team is going to work. And
as a fellow Josh,
and I would have to say, I would have to say, while everyone is going to be, and even myself, I brought up the stats earlier when the signing was announced. And I looked up, how many teams he had been on, and it's an overwhelming number. I can't even remember it right now. But like Dardoch has hop teams more than most players. However, there's a reason that every time he gets kicked, another team is still willing to pick him up. Right? There are two sides to this coin.
Jeez.
Yes, he's getting kicked off a lot.
I went to his Leaguepedia.
He's also getting picked up a lot. All right, what is it?
Yeah, okay, so TL Academy, TL. But then he actually bounced between TL and TL Academy a bunch. Then Immortals.
Just say LCS teams. What's the total?
So
it's like 6 or 7.
TL, Immortals, CLG. I'm not going to count going back to TL. Echo Fox, Optic, and TSM.
So
Sixth.
6. Yeah. So
6 of 10.
Anyway, there is a reason why every team kind of has this mentality of, okay, but I can make it work, and it's worth it to make it work because he is such a talented jungler. And then a lot of people have given up. They're like, people can't change. I'm a sincere believer that people can and do change. I mean, we were talking about random science facts at the beginning of this podcast just to warm up.
Yeah.
And literally...
Where's it? Are you talking about elephants now?
No. Okay. But literally, people do change. The cells in your body change. Aside from, I believe it's a part of your eye never changes. And there are a couple other parts that the cells actually, never renew or regenerate.
Okay.
Your body is constantly changing, and specifically the hippocampus, which controls learning and memory, changes, and the cells within it change. So even your memories of your past self change over time. So it's a very roundabout and random way of linking back to our earlier conversation of saying that I am one of those believers, and I can see why so many teams are like, okay, but let us try.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like he is a very talented jungler. He's an NA resident. It is worth it to try your hand, and the more people that try, your chances got to get better with each year, right?
You made me think of when I was trying to convince you again to try pho.
Oh,
because in that conversation, I said, all right, there's two major times in your life where your habits will likely change. And it's when you meet your first big significant other, or it's when you have kids. And you're like, well, I guess it's, if I get a kid, that's when it's happening.
Also, I feel like there are more times, because there's got to be some moment from adolescence to growing up where you also reevaluate everything, because people...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's medium habit changes. Like, for instance, when you go to college is when you're kind of finding yourself. The first time you move out, that stuff happens. But I'm cheating a little bit here. Moving in to a new team environment with how all-encompassing a lot of these LCS jobs are, you're completely changing so many of your friendships, so much of your day-to-day, there is a chance that you can fall into or intentionally move into good or better patterns. And I don't just want this to be like the Dardoch apologist show, because it's been bad so many times. And I have a theory about what TSM will do if Dardoch doesn't work, but keep going.
Yeah, so we're talking a lot about our feelings on the subject, but also if you look at the stats and physical things that you can count on TSM, try and go down the list and see what things would give a positive environment. Every single player that ever plays with Bjergsen always has all these great things to say about how good of a leader he is, how great he is in practice, how hardworking he is, how he kind of changes the environment of the team to be focused. And if you have that player that I'd say maybe is the most like that, where we don't have really other players in the league where literally every single player that ever plays with them is like, this guy is great.
There's one exception to that. And Svenskeren never said Bjergsen, but he did say how nice it was to be on C9.
Okay.
Do you attribute that to Bjergsen or TSM? Because they are linked.
That's true. And I definitely would have the sense that TSM is a stressful team to be on because of the brand, right? We talked about for upwards of 8 years, this is the team with the most fans, right?
Yeah.
Even before the LCS. So there comes a lot of pressure with that. Regardless, though, so I think Bjergsen on the team is a very positive one. I think that he's grown so much that he is in the position to be a strong leader. I also think that Peter Zhang is a very player-focused coach. Okay. So he is able to earn the respect of players, which is very difficult for, even today, a lot of head coaches in the LCS to do.
Yeah.
I talk to players every single day, and it's very common for them to complain about the lack of game knowledge, or, my coach has all these ridiculous things that they want us to do, like why am I doing jumping jacks and running sprints for punishment for being late to breakfast? Like, that's ridiculous. I'm a gamer, right? So there's all these laundry lists basically all the time with various different players, but again, for more word of mouth, lots of players, and even with personal experience, Peter does a very good job of getting that player respect. So maybe, and we did this last time when Dardoch moved teams as well, and we try and count up the things that are in the team and in the infrastructure that could lead to a success there. And I think there are a decent amount on TSM.
I think one of the make or break is literally how long will he be willing to have a healthy back and forth with Bjergsen. Because I think when you join the team and the first time he tells you something that you should stop doing, Dardoch's going to probably stop the first time. But then the 15th, like when it gets that far down the road, especially if it's after a loss, that's when the tension will start happening. But I think that last year, a lot of people forget how close TSM was to feeling okay. So, hear me out. Spring split, 2-0 up in the final against TL. They lose 3 games in a row, don't go to MSI. Summer split, yes, they lose to Clutch in the 5th-6 match, but then 2-0 up in the regional qualifier final. Lose 3 more games in a row. They have lost their last 6 consecutive games that would have clinched an international berth. So it's like...
That's a weird way to get consecutive in there, but I'll allow it.
They've lost a lot in a row. Every time. But that just... It's kind of meant to say this team was so incredibly close to having an appearance internationally, and even though their LCS results in the past have been like first, second, they were always judged by their international appearances and never really found big-time international success. People tend to write off the 2015 IEM that they won, but that was its own like separate topic that people can debate on their own. So like you just wonder the alternate timeline where they do go to MSI. could they go 4-6 in groups and then make semifinals and lose? It's like, well, that would just be like another TSM team. And how much panic would there have been here? And then the second question is this an upgrade from that team that narrowly missed? And I think it is. I think
for sure it is.
I think they still have Spica. So that's the theory I have with the Dardoch thing, is when I talked to Peter last year, he still really liked Spica. And he was this really young jungler with high mechanics, and he got put in way before he ever should have been put in to the LCS. And if that hasn't done like permanent damage to his psyche and confidence, it probably hasn't, right? Like he can still go into academy. If Dardoch does blow up by week 6, I think they still have this guy who's a serviceable jungler who had them within a game of going to Worlds in that clutch series. And then the bottom lanes, Ven, Smoothie for Kabe Biofrost, as you and I have talked about, I think it's a stronger laning phase. I think if there was too many cooks in the kitchen with Smoothie and Bjerg without Smoothie and having a quieter support like Biofrost, who's been on the team before, I think is an upgrade. So here's a team that was second in spring, bad in summer, but nearly made Worlds, making an upgrade. Based on the odds, I don't think they'll compete with TL off the bat, but I think this team actually can make Worlds, if that train of thought makes sense.
I definitely think that this team, this roster, is a strict upgrade over the previous roster.
Yeah.
I think their bottom lane as a whole will be better than their bottom lane was in summer. And I think that Dardoch has had strictly better stage performances than both Grig and Acadian. So,
yeah. Acadian had like a brief stint of
he definitely had
off,
some good performances, but then you
inconsistent.
think back to Dardoch's performances, and we're going down this laundry list of teams that he played for. At the beginning of most of those teams, they were dominant.
Yeah.
And he definitely has had some poor games on stage, but I think he definitely has had much stronger performances as well. So I would say that this TSM roster did upgrade when you compare them to themselves. But I always am looking at not comparing teams to their old selves, comparing them to their new competition.
Okay.
Because everybody changes in the offseason, right?
That's where power rankings come
exactly.
in.
So,
where do you have them compared with their competition? I have them third.
I don't have my full power ranking in my head set, but I definitely have them. I have them in the top half. I'm pretty high on the new C9 roster as well, so I think I have them pretty high. But I do think that this has been a bump up for TSM.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about this golden time before the season starts where every team has this like best case scenario and worst case scenario. And I'd say there's actually a pretty good chance that this TSM team jumps out of the gate and looks pretty good right away, because like the reason Bjergsen didn't go to All-Stars, he was like already boot camping with his team. They have been practicing as a 5-man unit for a while. And I know there's other LCS teams, whether it's through visa issues or getting their training facility set up or just not grouping together earlier, they're going to have like a week or two of practice before the season starts. And then this TSM team is going to come in and like trying to simulate mid-season form because they've just done a month-long boot camp right before the season. And yeah, that's where I think they can get a little bit of an edge, at least in the end of regular season power rankings, is I think the start of their spring has a chance of being pretty good. Plus, you're going to have the honeymoon phase of Dardoch. Whether or not that can turn into a healthy long-term relationship, it'll be good. So I have them third. You have them top half. Do you have any final thoughts for TSM in 2020?
I'm optimistic, Jatt. I don't think that they are going to return to the glory days of being the unquestionable top dog, right? Because they ruled North America for so long. That's how they got so many fans. But as you said, giving up Double Lift, that fateful trade for the bottom lane, giving it, it's not even that they gave it up, it's that they gave it to a competitor. And giving Double Lift to your competitor, Team Liquid, who wanted to stack the full roster.
They've actually given 2 MVPs to competitors.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
With Svenskeren and Double Lift. So there's a fair bit of regret there, I feel like.
But it will be an improvement. maybe not a return to the top.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I think the start of their season is going to be pretty exciting. I can't wait to watch them start. They don't play on the first day of LCS. They actually start on the 26th. And then on the kind of debut of Monday Night League, they'll have that rematch against TL from the spring finals. So they're starting off the season with a bang. Kobe, thanks for joining me.
No problem.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Jatt, joined by Azael for the EG, or Evil Geniuses episode. I feel like you might know a little bit about the org.
I've heard of them. I could say that much.
Yeah, I actually think a lot of people who watch LCS don't know the extent of your gaming history with EG.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably one of, if not the longest standing EG player. I think I was probably with the org for as long or longer than anyone. I was with them for 7 years about. Joined, back for World of Warcraft, playing pro WoW in 2007, late 2007, I believe, after I won my first MLG tournament. I was basically getting scammed by the org I was on. Got signed by Evil Geniuses, was lucky enough to win the first event I went to and got signed by them, which was a bit of a coup at the time because they were kind of a known team. And was with them for many years doing, not only WoW, but kind of through the initial building of the organization, because that was before the Dota team had been signed. That was before StarCraft 2 had been signed. That was before a lot of the big CS players had come into the organization. And, before EG had become, at one point, it was really kind of the biggest pro gaming team in the world. And I was kind of there throughout a lot of the building of that and doing a lot of the working with sponsors and that sort of thing, kind of really from 2007, 2008 till like 2014, 2015 era.
Yeah, so the brand itself, for the people that don't know, has been around for a while.
Yeah.
And I even remember, for the people that have just followed EG in the LCS, EG was actually in the EU LCS in the summer of 2013. That was the old COG EU squad with Froggen and Snoopay. And they finished 4th. And then there was like this splinter, because 3 people on the team wanted to come to NA, and then Froggen and Wicked wanted to stay in EU. So they just split. Froggen made Alliance, and then EG came over to NA, and that roster was actually stayed in the league for 2 or 3 years and didn't really find success. Some names there. Pobelter was on it pretty much the whole time. Alltech came in after Yellow Pete retired. Snoopay was obviously on it. Never really found success. At the end of 2015, became Winter Fox. And that was the last we've seen of them. Now, almost 5 years later, they acquire Echo Fox's slot, blow everything up, and they're kind of back in the LCS.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. The organization really does have a pretty tremendous history in esports and also in League. I mean, the team actually started as just a Quake team in Canada, I think, in the late 90s. So that is actually the origins of this team, which is ancient in esports terms, right? It actually started to get a bit bigger when Alex Garfield was the guy who kind of originally came in and started building up.
Yeah.
That was, I believe, 2004. He sponsored a Canadian CS team, and the team kind of built up from there. And, here we are now in 2019, 20 odd years later, the organization is kind of trying to have this resurgence, right?
Yeah.
Because after it had actually been sold, kind of post EG and EU LCS and NALCS era, they had a TI winner, they had, world champions in WoW, they had, all these different games and teams doing really, really well across StarCraft and CS and Dota and Warcraft 3. And the team kind of disintegrated a bit, right?
Yeah.
Alex Garfield sold it to Twitch. Twitch, I think, then decided that it was kind of like a conflict of interest for them to own a pro gaming team while also hosting tournaments and this sort of thing. And the team had kind of dilapidated. And now they're having this resurgence where they have come back in. They have investors. They have a new CEO. And they're saying, we want to achieve greatness once more. We want to be, the best team in the world again. And getting an LCS team is a huge part of that. They've also signed a big Counter-Strike team, but getting back into the LCS is one of their huge bets on becoming one of the big orgs in the world again. Because if you're just an esports fan of the last couple of years, you may not have even heard of Evil Geniuses.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the case for some people watching. But the fact that they have a little bit of that brand tie-in, I think will help them hit the ground a little bit running if they win. Another thing that they've done, as we're moving into 2020 is, yes, when they bought Echo Fox's slot, they got rid of everything. But there were rumors of some really big numbers for acquiring Svenskeren. But if you're coming into the league as a new team, trading for the league MVP, if you think about that in sports terms, is kind of crazy. Like, you're almost never allowed to do that. I have my own qualms and kind of tangent for a minute. I think I said this a little bit last year. I think Svenskeren was a top jungler in the league, top 3 player. I don't think he should have won the MVP as good as he was, just for the fact, like, even what happened afterwards, the fact that going into the finals, we thought maybe they'd sub him out. I don't think you sub out an MVP. Going to Worlds, he didn't play two games, I believe. He only played 4 of them.
Yeah.
The MVP is going to play every game. And you don't trade the reigning MVP, to me. But that doesn't say he's not an amazing player, and it's a huge acquisition for this Evil Geniuses team. The rest of the team, he comes over with Kumo, who played a few games when Licorice was done, as well as Zeyzal, who was the support for Cloud9. Then they brought in Bang, who had an off year with 100 Thieves, and Jiizuke in mid lane from Vitality, although there were rumors that they tried to spend to the moon to get Chovy from Griffin, but he decided to stay in Korea. So a lot of news about like what they were trying to do. The thing that is clear is they're committed to winning from all of their messaging, and they're willing to spend.
Yeah, I mean, you saw their opening video and their content that came out and interviews with the CEO. I can't remember her name. Maybe you have it, but Nicole, excuse me. So, it is one of those things where they came in and they were very bold with their messaging. It's not just, hey guys, we're here. It was, hey guys, we're here to shit on everyone, right? Like we're here to be the best team. We are here to take down Team Liquid. They explicitly said that in some of the interviews that they are here to beat the best teams, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to come out swinging with that sort of message, you can't just sign 5 academy players and call it a day, right? Like,
exactly.
You've got to make some moves here. Everyone's like, did they understand the game? Are they trolling? And I don't know if this is the team to beat TL, but had they got Chovy, and that's pretty insane. And the moves that they were trying to make, and some of the moves that they did make, to be fair, are pretty impressive. Whether or not you think Svenskeren should have been the MVP, I don't think I had him as my number 1, but I still think I had him in my top 3 for MVP.
Same.
And my only reason for not having him, in that number 1 spot was I thought he had some more down games compared to someone like Core JJ. But he was still an incredible player. I still think one of the best players in the league.
Yep.
Didn't work out in Worlds for him, obviously, but you're also bringing in Bang, a former world champion. You're bringing in these guys that have a lot of experience. I think the big question marks for most people are going to be the solo lanes. And I do have some concerns about, not necessarily the individual pieces, but how they're all going to work together.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because I think Svenskeren is the standout player on the roster for sure. But I have the same question about Xsmithy on Immortals, because Svenskeren and Xsmithy have kind of been linked as these 2 most winning junglers in the last half decade of LCS. You look at every final, and either they're jungling against each other or one of them is winning. And that has been with pretty stellar laners. And the question with Svenskeren that I started thinking about when he was kind of winning his MVP and everyone was talking up Niski is, hey, like, wait a second. This team was everyone talking about how great Jensen is because the team was really good at playing around mid. And now we're talking about how successful Niski is. How much of it is Svenskeren and how much of it is the mid laner that's there? And I think it'll get a little bit revealed when we say, like, wow, Jiizuke having this breakout split in the LCS, amazing.
Yeah.
Or I think at this point, if Svenskeren is able to have a third mid laner be very successful and win it again, then he's like really solidified as this godlike jungler. But also, I was just reading an interview from Invent Global that talked to them while they're on their bootcamp, and they just asked a question like, what do we expect to see from your role this split? And all the players like Kumo were saying, oh, you're going to see Lucian and Mordekaiser, and Bang was saying, oh, you're going to see the new stuff, Aphelios and Senna. And Svenskeren said, well, they nerfed jungle again. So I might need some help this year.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been hearing a lot of, junglers talking about how they think the jungle is almost purely an early game role for pro.
I think so too.
And I do think that lends itself more to what you're talking about, where then you really are just becoming kind of that force multiplier, right? You know, you're not necessarily the one who's going to be able to carry the game in the late stages on the Olaf, but you have to put your solo lanes in a position where they can then carry. And they have to kind of make good on the leads that you get them, on the advantages that you have created for them throughout the early stages. And I mean, solo lanes are so important. Bot lane is obviously important too, but it's like when you're looking at these individual pieces around Svenskeren, you have Kumo in the top lane who, you know, while I think he was pretty well received in the LCS, when you actually, you know, looked at those individual games, he played 3 out of 4 Jace games. I think it was 3 Jace games and an Aatrox. You know, he solo killed Impact, and that was kind of the big splash that he made where a lot of people were talking it up. But on average, I mean, his laning stats were pretty abysmal. While playing Jace, while getting his, you know, his key pick, that is an early game lane bully, he averaged something, off the top of my head, I think it was like -12 or -14 CS. I looked this up a week ago or something. It was around there. And I remember thinking last year that his laning hadn't been that impressive. And, you know, I am really curious to see what kind of depth this guy's champion pool has. You know, is he going to be able to perform on a variety of champions? Is he going to be able to actually be worth the investment of Svenskeren's time? And, you know, and then you look down to the bot lane and people are saying, well, Bang maybe just didn't work with Afro. He didn't have a, you know, lane dominant support. But guess what? He's paired with Zeyzal, who, when you talk to a lot of pro players, they say Zeyzal is a great support, is great at shot calling, good at team fighting, but laning is his key weakness. That he's one of the worst laning supports in the league. So again, you have paired Bang maybe with someone that is not necessarily going to work out very well.
I completely agree. I think you and I both have similar qualms of what happens when you put an exceptional jungler with laners who haven't been good.
Yep.
Because it is linked. Does the jungler make their laning better and kind of solve their weakness as a player? Usually, though, when I'm jungling, or what I always preach to people is, your life is way easier if you just gank the guy who's winning already.
Yeah.
Because
you're going to win that 2v2.
Because then the other jungler loses his agency. But if the situation arises where Svenskeren is trying to bail his lanes out across the map, they're just going to lose.
Yeah.
So going a little bit zoomed out to the power ranking of these teams, I did the wisdom of the crowd power ranking where I asked 16 people what they thought, and EG averaged out at 5.4 with a relatively high deviation. Them and 100 Thieves had the 2 biggest spread. I think there is the world where things in that spread happen, but my personal opinion of it is that their lanes aren't strong enough to take advantage of Svenskeren, and they're going to struggle. So I believe I put EG at 7th, which would be way under their expectations and way under their branding. But right now, that's kind of how I see it. What are your thoughts?
I kind of think they could end around maybe like I think I have them around 6th. And I think that it's a situation where there is more room for them to grow when you talk about the variance in the rankings. One of the things that gave me some hope for them was actually, you know, talking to some of the EU casters and talking to some people about Jiizuke. Because, you know, last year he did have a down year. The year before that, there was a lot of hype around Vitality. Jiizuke had a very strong year. And, you know, last year was apparently very linked to his health. You know, he even had a tweet talking about how
he missed some games.
He was going to have to sub himself out because he could never sleep and he wasn't feeling well all the time. And it was, you know, the hardest time in his life that he had had for his health. And, you know, going into summer, people were thinking maybe there would be that resurgence, but, you know, it didn't quite work out. And he has been working on his health by all accounts. You know, I had been told that he had like lost a bunch of weight. He was feeling way better. He's focusing on his health and kind of has perhaps fixed that area of his game. So, you know, maybe now being in a new environment with his fantastic jungler, having fixed some of his health issues, this could be a time for a real resurgence for Jiizuke. You know, and he does have some picks that even, you know, in summer when it was kind of his down year a bit, you know, things like the Echo and the Rise, which are kind of his key picks that he has been so damn good at. So, you know, if you have a really strong, aggressive mid laner, as we kind of saw from him not last year, but the year before, to pair with Svenskeren, then all of a sudden maybe you have that Niski Svenskeren situation again. If your bot lane can kind of be neutral, it's okay to have like a role-playing lane. You know, if Kumo's not dominating, just put him on Ornn duty and you never know. But, you know, these are quite a few ifs, right? And that's where it's kind of getting tough to really put them above, I think, a lot of the teams that I have near the top, like, you know, your TL, your Liquid, your TSM, even, you know, teams like CLG. I think, putting them above any of those teams feels really hard for me right now.
Yeah, at least because we're trying, or at least I'm trying to rank off of either what I've seen from them or just the highest percentage of all the varying possibilities. Like, we know we're both kind of on the page of weaker lane, strong jungler. Yeah. So we don't need to dwell on that for too long. We can talk a little bit about the what if positive factor, and I wanted to think about the bottom lane a little bit, because the Bang Zeyzal lane could be really intriguing. But again, there's so many ifs, because my read of Zeyzal is that he can be, at least whenever we heard or listen into Cloud9's comms, like he knows what's to do. He sets up the next play before it happens. It's really good to have someone like that on the team. That's another reason I think Svenskeren and Zeyzal are so comfortable together, because they're like mid to late game shot calling is super solid. But we look at sneaky Smoothie transitioning to sneaky Zeyzal. The team started winning more, but losing lane more. And then you look at last year, Bang Aframu, you do wonder which player had more to do with the losing lanes. But it was, again, actually kind of the same style of lane where just get through this laning phase, and then we can take advantage of your great team fighting. So obviously Zeyzal, when they did like a quick in the interview, they said bang or sneaky. It's like, of course he's going to say bang, and he said bang. But I can see them ending up being a fairly similar style lane. And depending on what the meta is, right? Depending on if, like, I see Nautilus is getting nerfed again, like 10 more damage off. If those all-in supports kind of lose the fatal blow for playing really aggressive early, then you can start splitting lane a little bit more, and the meta could actually favor them. I feel like they need a little bit of a meta shift for to play to their strengths.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think if I'm taking the kind of glass half full approach here, I'm saying you want that Bang Zeyzal lane to almost function kind of like a Cody Sun lane, which maybe sounds funny because you're comparing a world champion,
Cody Sun.
It's good. And you're saying you could be Cody Sun if you really try, Bang. But it's kind of true, right? Cody Sun has performed over the last couple of years with various bot lanes as very rarely a dominant laner, but he's always been kind of that late game insurance. He farms well. They don't sacrifice a lot in bot lane. They don't necessarily have to give a ton of resources down there. But come team fight time, he's ready to go, and he's ready to carry the team fights. He's ready to actually, be the difference maker for the team. And if you can set up that lane to have that sort of a style, you do have built-in synergy with Zeyzal and Svenskeren. Jungle and support are often the shot callers of a team. Guess what? You got those two guys from the same squad. They have some experience with Kumo, so there is going to be a fair bit of built-in C9 synergy there.
Yep.
And I think that the shot calling you can expect to be solid. I really do think that so much of it is just going to hinge on, can Jiizuke have a good season? Because you can't have 3 lanes sitting back and be like, all right, MVP jungler, go get him, because you're pinned, right? When all of your lanes are losing, it's not just that you're going to lose 2v2, it's that they have more vision, that their jungle has more access to scuttle crabs, to objectives. We know how important Dragon is going to be coming into this split. It feels like everyone is talking about top lane doesn't matter. You have to go to the Dragon. So playing around that is going to be really important. If your bot lane is not going to be dominant, your mid lane better well be, or you're not going to have access to that Dragon Pit. So, those guys I think have got to be able to be, kind of the spark plug for the team, right? Get Jiizuke on aggressive picks, get Svenskeren, going early, look for 2v2s, look to move around the map, and then I can start seeing, things coming together for EG.
What actually hurts the perception of this team, I think, is the fact that the article leaked that they were
going for Chovy
and that Jiizuke was like a backup plan.
Yeah.
Because you could totally sell, hey, Svenskeren's this great aggressive jungler. You saw what he did with Niski. Wait until he gets with Jiizuke, right? The guy with Worlds experience and all these things, and he's going to unlock him to be aggressive and roam and take over the map. And then they could just build this up a little bit more. But when you see the Jacob Wolf, like, couldn't get Chovy, so I guess they got this guy. Like, it just hurts.
It does. It really does hurt. It's like you got your local rec league team, like, Josh, I got LeBron for the team. I got LeBron. He's 70% of the way there. We can do it. And then, you come back next week. You're like, where's LeBron? We got Freak. He couldn't
That's a little bit too much.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But
I'll give a more accurate one. I'm just like, we got Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah, there you go. It's just one of those situations where it's like you get so hyped up, right? And people are like, oh my God, this is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
And Jiizuke is a good player. And I think that, as you say, people would have been excited. And I think that's one of the reasons that probably a lot of the orgs are like, damn you, Jacob Wolf.
I know. Right.
Anytime something leaks, it does create expectations around that, especially if it is like a failed transaction, But that's the reality of creating a roster in League of Legends. That's the reality of being a GM in League of Legends and in any sport. You're not guaranteed to get the roster that you want to get.
Yep.
You are competing for the roster that you want to get.
Yep.
And if it's your number one choice, guess what? It's probably someone else's number one choice too, or it's at the very least one of their top couple choices, right? We even saw for Golden Guardians, they actually released in one of their videos that a lot of their roster planning had been around getting Vulcan.
Yeah.
Guess what? They don't have Vulcan.
They mentioned not getting Hakuho in the video as well, and they're like, well, the rest of them on the board, probably just do Keith and switch him up, which I think is troll in its own way. I talked about that with Freak. The last thing I want to talk about with EG, I heard actually very briefly they were discussing this on Hotline League as well, but it's around EG's branding coming into this year because Live Evil,
the logo.
right? I actually don't care about the logo.
Okay.
A lot of people care about the logo. You can talk about the logo in a bit. But Live Evil, Nicole's video where they're like trash talking all their teams. They even had an AMA where someone asked them like, give your flamey comment to like all 10 teams, and they did, and they went like deep on some of them. Like James Dolan for COG and the Knicks. They like did an Immortals thing where they like linked a We Aren't Broke article from like the LA Valiant where like they had this big Overwatch drama.
Oh my God.
They asked GGS why they haven't been relegated yet. Like deep, like real trash talk.
Yeah.
So from an org, that's a brand, but like Kumo, Svenskeren, Jiizuke, Bang, and Zeyzal are the nicest players. It doesn't match up at all. Like we're not going to have a post-game interview of Zeyzal, or Kumo just like dunking on
get them out of the league, they suck.
Right? I don't. So what do you think of that mismatch between the like friendly players they've signed and the evil trash talking brand?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. I will give them the benefit of the doubt in that they're trying to be, more than just an LCS team. This is like an org whole thing, right? So maybe it'll match up with some of the other players, but it does feel weird specifically because it was with their LOL videos and all this stuff. If you had a team where you had if they got Double Lift and they did this, I could actually see it, right? Because Double Lift is willing to go out there and have some kind of spicy takes and stuff, or even like how G2 is, right? They've got some swagger, and that's honestly kind of how it felt to me. It was like you saw how G2 got really popular by kind of being these badasses and like the villain bit. I know Ocelot kind of takes issue with them being called the villain now. He says they're the hero because they're doing so well, which is fair. They are the heroes of Europe.
People can like villains.
Exactly. They're a popular villain.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Fine.
Yeah. So I think that's what EG is looking for here.
Yeah, I think so too.
With the Live Evil thing, because people want some spice. People want some trash talk. People don't just want, we're going to try our best. We're really going to prepare and give it 100%. And our opponents are really good and they're going to try hard too. And someone will win. People want to hear, this guy blows. I slam him in scrims every day, and it's going to be free, right? And people are like, oh! That's what people want. And that's what I think they're trying to get towards is having some personality, having some spice. If their players can buy into it, I think it's awesome.
I think Jiizuke would be the closest to buying in.
He's got some swagger.
Yeah, and I also don't think that EG should be making roster decisions around how well the player can trash talk.
They get Dardoch and Tarzan, and
it's a little unlucky that they signed such like friendly sounding players. Tell me your thoughts on the logo before we wrap up.
So I feel a little bit bad flaming the logo, but it's just, to me, the weird thing, and this is just kind of being candid about it, is when you take over an org like EG, you're doing it because of all the history that the organization has, right? So it kind of felt to me as if Astralis bought the Origin brand and then immediately rebranded it, right?
Right.
You know, you have all these people who have such attachment to it, and I am 100% biased because I was on the team for nearly a decade, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a huge part of my life. So seeing the logo change and stuff just kind of was like, why? You know, it's like you just bought the Yankees and changed the logo, right? You know, this is what people equated EG to for years and years and years was they were the Yankees v Sports.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had that type of brand association. You know, they had most of the most popular StarCraft players in the world for a really long time. You know, all of the English players, you know, when you look at guys like Stefano and Idra and Thorzane and Huck and all these guys in Control and so on and so forth. And, you know, the CS team was beloved. And, you know, you had Grubby on this team from Warcraft 3. Like there were so many big names and so much association with that. You know, TI winners, alliances essentially in EG org. So they really won.
And it's not that they like modified the logo, it's that they completely changed it. Like they could have modernized it in your eyes. Like they could have tweaked it a little bit to look better. But.
And I know they did kind of come out and say like, oh, we still have a different logo coming or something. I think
they said that.
Because they kind of just changed the kind of like iconic circular EG to just text.
Yeah.
But we'll see where they go with it. And you know, and maybe it'll suit them well for that direction. But as a former EG player, as a lifelong EG fan, you know, I followed all the teams, all the squads within different games.
Yeah, and you're only putting them 6th.
Yeah.
Like, what gives, man?
I don't know, man. I just gotta go with my head and not my heart.
Yeah, all right.
It's weird.
Yeah, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
See you guys next time.